Custom painting. Why and how you should try it yourself. A detailed look at every step of the way. The preparation, sanding, filling, sanding, more sanding, priming, more sanding, and finally the paint and the fun you can have with that. So we're going to be looking at all those aspects and procedures one by one. What to do, what not to do, and what not to be afraid of, honestly. As with most things, it's the preparation that is really important, especially with painting. Whether it's right or wrong, I usually start with a fairly coarse grade, maybe 150, maybe 200 grit, dry sanding of the entire item. And having done that, you can then identify areas that are going to need filling with a little bondo or filler. I've been using one of these. I love these actually. They're kind of a spongy block. This is quite a coarse grade to start with because there's plenty of layers of paint here. And you can see there, this little guy here, there's a little dent in the tank which I'm going to have to build up with a bit of bondo, but you can tell, this is the beauty of sanding stuff down, you can tell where the low spots are because apart from feeling it, you've got all the layers of paint, including the blue, still there, even though I've hit bare metal either side. If they're just light scratches, you might get away with something like this, a primer, filler, paint. Otherwise you're going to need to break out the bondo and be careful to try and get the mix right. I always tend to overdo it on the hardener, so you end up with very little time to get it applied and it starts going off too quickly. So yeah, try and get it as accurate as possible. And again, I usually put it on too thick, so keep it as thin as possible because that will just save you time sanding it all off. Mixing up a little bit more bondo, probably a little bit too much actually, honestly, but there we go. And I always put too much hardener in, although I didn't that time because look, it's kind of grey, not pink, so that's good. I always use the Family Best Silver just to spoon it out of the jar, and yeah, let's squeeze a little bit of this on. There, that's all mixed in, hardener, etc. So yeah, that's quite pink, so I'm going to put the camera down and get on with it because it's going to go off fairly bloody quickly. Yeah, that's going off super fast, which is when you end up with that rough finish that I had up this end. Yeah, so there we go. So that hopefully is proud of the rest of the bodywork, and this time around will be job done. And there's that little ding in the fuel tank, duly filled and primed and sanded and looking good. Meantime, that needs more sanding. All this needs sanding. More sanding, more sanding. See what I mean about paint? It's a lot of prep. Progress on the tank, less leopard spots, smaller leopard spots. These are coming along. That's still horrible. The paint on that is horrible. Can you see the orange peel? Yeah, look. So when you're prepping, which is the complete key to a half decent paint job, this is what you're looking for here, where it's a big area of different colour, because that's where you're smoothing it over, whereas here you can see the blue, the dark blue, there's only a small line to the primer, and then the light blue that I put on later. So that's going to be a ridge for sure, and that's what you want to avoid. So that's going to need some more work there. These feel good and look good, so that's kind of the key to it visually. Thanks to the baking Arizona sun, this has been out there for about 10 minutes before I brought it in. It's already touch dry, and actually white is a really good primer to show up little imperfections like these guys here which I missed. It's just some runs, we'll sand those out. I've identified all the blemishes that need filling, little hole, tiny little holes there, and a little bit of sanding. So I hope I didn't labour that too much, but it is laborious and it is important. It is all about the prep, the sanding, the filling, the priming, the sanding, the filling, the priming. Let's have a look at the fun bit. So So we're going to look at the candy tank that I did on the Kawasaki, which is a slightly different process because there's a number of different coats. And then we're going to look at some kind of paint effects, some of which I discovered by happy accident, others that I thought I'd give it a go, see what happened. So as I said before, don't be afraid to experiment with stuff. All the worst that's going to happen is you're going to have to sand it down and do it again. So let's go candy. Lid ready for priming, and found another little glitch. And there's the underside of the tank, black enamelled. So yeah, that bit's done at least. Tank is finally ready, so all elements are ready for the paint process, having been primed. I like that overspray. Anyway, so this is it. It's complicated. We have reached base camp. There is the base coat of the candy apple, a coarse metallic base coat. Cool. Candy next. Wait. And just FYI, one can, barely enough to do the whole job. Yeah, so all of those and the tank, obviously. Yeah, so it's one generous coat. I mean, probably the equivalent to 2 coats, honestly. And I'm very excited to see what this turns out like. I'm also slightly dubious about how easy it's going to be to paint, because I'm figuring it's like a lacquer coat on top, like a clear coat with colour. So let's see how that goes. More gingerly coming into play, Mr. Tyndall. And as far as shaking paint goes, you can either shake it furiously for 1 to 2 minutes, or just gently while you have a cigarette. Anyway, as I think I said, I think this is going to turn out very similar to the Honda, except of course I'm coating the whole tank with the green, with the teal. But yeah, I think this candy is going to be very similar to this, a translucent paint that allows the metallic base to come through underneath, which is exactly what we did on the Honda. Alright, let's do this. As you can see, I've already started on the bottom edge. So you can have it as teal as you like, really. And you just keep layering it on. And you get that super glittery metallic coming through. Going on nicely, actually. I'm not looking at the camera, by the way, so if I go off screen, I apologise. I'm looking at what I'm doing. Again, as usual, 4 to 6 inches away. Try not to get any runs. Alright, so I'm doing the flat surface now, where you can afford to be a little bit more generous with the paint because it ain't going to drip so much. And I'm doing that fairly quickly whilst the can is still fairly full. Well, that looks pretty cool, but at this point I'm worried that I haven't got enough of the teal to do the rest of the bits. So, yeah, well, that's the tail section done. It's quite difficult to get an even coat of this stuff on, honestly. As you can possibly tell, it's a bit difficult with the light, but yeah, kind of running on empty. I do like it though, but of course it's different from the other teal by quite a long chalk. It's quite sparkly, but yeah, I would say a really nice colour. Now what we're going to do is crack out the finishing stuff. If I can find it, it's buried in here somewhere. And that is the clear coat, the gloss enamel. But we're not going to be using that, and we're not going to be using that. We're going to be using one of these, because these are 2K, and that's important. For two good reasons. It's petrol proof, yes. That alone is good enough. But it's a really good quality gloss coat finish. So, and it seems to be compatible with anything, honestly. We'll find out in a minute, right? Oh yeah, the other thing about this is it only lasts for like 48 hours max once you blend it, right? There's these little things on the bottom that you have to activate. So yeah, we're going to do lots of stuff with this. Remove lid. We have a grenade pin. This is a little different. Usually there's a button that you push down. With this one, it's a pin and you pull it up. Okay, we are exploding. Well, I bit the bullet on the clear coat for the tank and the tailpiece, and while I was at it, I thought I might as well do the Honda tank too, because as we've learned in the past, if you don't do this stuff with 2K, yes, that, then petrol just mullers it. So they're all glossed up. Another coat coming soon. Well, it would be rude not to see it all in situ really at this point, just to get an idea. So it's all just slotted in there on this side at least, including the back light. And it's a beautiful colour. It's a concoction, as you well know, of teal and ocean and whatever was in that first can. So that's that, candy painting indeed. And of course, if it's normal paint, then you just skip the base coat thing. So primer, several coats, top coat, several coats, 2K, gloss, satin or matte finish, couple of coats. Job done. Let's have a look at some of the fun stuff, mixing it up, experimenting. First up, some old gold. Yeah, I tried numerous colours straight off the shelf. None of them quite achieved the dirty old gold that I wanted to get to. So I ended up mixing a bit of primer in while it was wet and letting the two mingle, and I liked the result. It was what I was after. Now, I used it on numerous little bits of trim on the Augusta and actually the rear swing arm as well. But whilst the grey primer was still wet, I thought I'd try it out and just throw some gold on there, and it's come out really nice. This is golder than it looks on the video. It's actually it's perfect. That kind of shows the difference between the gold and the dirty primer gold, and that's kind of what I'm going for. So unfortunately I got to unscrew that engine start button, which was a real pain in the ass to get in there, honestly, and respray that with a little bit of primer and this. But at least that's all I've got to do. Yeah, the interesting thing is just to let the primer get kind of dry, but not quite there. So it's still shiny to the eye, but almost dry. And then spray on the gold. Interesting technique I've just learned. All right, so you can probably see the difference now between that, which is what I'm going for, and that, which is straight out of the can, and that boy down there in the shadows. So here's how you do it. So these are compatible paints, I hope. At least they have proved to be so far, thus far. So little squirt of primer. That'll do. Nicely wet. And the gold. There you go. Dirty. And all we need now is some satin finish. Love that. Dirty gold. Next up, a variation on the theme of the candy. I used the base coat on top of a white on the Gutsi behind me to achieve a kind of metallic white. I think it came out all right. Well, there's our first coat of white enamel, and went pretty well actually. So I'm going to sand that down with some really fine paper a little, and give it another coat, and of course our fairy dust. Time to paint it. Lightly primed. Ready for our white and fairy dust. What I'm doing was actually painting it solid white, and while the white was still wet, I hit it with the fairy dust. Primed, white and sprinkled with fairy dust. Second time around, even better. And took me about 15 minutes in total. Drying time not included, but here in Arizona that's fairly quick. Well, the masking worked pretty well. That's kind of cool, right? Like it. And then a couple of instances using that anodizing paint, which is kind of like a semi-lacquer type deal, obviously with a colour involved. I used it to produce a fade from like a dark blue to a light blue on the Honda fuel tank, and I used it for the same on the Augusta, which turned out to be a real kind of one of those happy accidents where it reacted with the paint that was underneath that was still a bit wet, I guess, and kind of produced this leather effect, which was really cool. I've not been able to reproduce that, unfortunately. It was just one of those flukes. I mean, honestly, that thing that happened on the Augusta tank, most people would put down to a bad paint job, but I just really like the effect. Too late to go back now, and I'm mixing it up again. So some metallic, slightly darker blue on top of that light blue matte, fading it. I can't wait to see if this has worked, and if it hasn't, it'll be a disaster, but I kind of like this. Threw in some of this just for a laugh. Not bad at all. Interestingly, that last paint, which was an anodizer that I put on, kind of really darkened that up, which is nice. And then we got this kind of leather effect down here because it's incompatible paint. But actually I kind of like that. Happy accidents, sometimes. Now we're talking. I like that. Add. See? Told you so. Oh, all right. There we go. Fading from blue to a lighter blue. And this will be removed, revealing the sparkly silver underneath. Looks like it's got a little dent. That's a bagger, isn't it? I didn't do that. I didn't notice that. Oh well. Yeah, I'm very happy with the paint job. Cool. I was going to wait till morning, but I'm impatient, you know that. And I'm sure you're just as excited to see the result as I am. So, yeah, ooh, flashlight. Yeah, that's definitely a dent. That's bloody annoying. Okay. Anyway, I'm obviously going to wait until the morning before I decide whether this is good, because artificial light is never good to look at this kind of stuff in. But I think I like that. Yeah. Kind of get the idea. The flashlight's not helping actually, is it? Yeah, kind of works. So before I peel off those stickers, I'm going to make sure I like the finish. Then I'm going to peel off the sticker, and then I'm going to give it some gloss on top. Well, I'm relatively happy with that. I think that looks pretty neat. Proof of the pudding is whether the masking has worked or not, so I have to carefully remove those stickers. Carefully peeled the stickers off, and that is kind of the semi-finished result. I shall be glossing over that, hoping not to ruin it in the process. Yeah, like that. Nice. And in situ. Very nice. Yeah. Cool. Lovely. Well, I hope you found some of that useful, interesting, especially the experimentation there at the end. I hope I didn't overdo it with the examples, but it's always good to see lots of different aspects from different jobs. There's actually a whole bunch of other stuff that I wanted to cover, like some of my silly masking techniques, which you might find useful. So I'm probably going to do another video with engine painting, frame painting, and weird and wonderful masking techniques. If you're new to the channel and you're still watching, thanks for hanging in there. And if you haven't checked out some of the episodes, yes, I have episodes. Check out those. Yeah, there's a full playlist on the Honda CB750 build, the Kawasaki KZ650. What else did we cover? Oh, the MV, of course. Yeah, so a lot going on. Check it out. So if you thought the video was any good, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, do so down here. And of course, encourage others to watch my lunacy.